Savvy Business Radio, drawing out the best from our guests with our host, Christina Nitchman.
Today, we're joined by Phillip Broussard, two-tour Navy veteran, business owner, and blues musician, sharing his entrepreneurial journey and tips. Find out more about Bruce on his Facebook page or Twitter at Facebook Phillip Broussard 86 or on Twitter.com at RealPhillip BROU. Hi, Phillip. Welcome to Savvy Business Radio. How are you this evening?
I'm doing wonderfully. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous, and we're so blessed to have you out here this evening. You have a tremendous background. You are a blues musician. You have your latest album out, which I'm excited that you share with our audience. Wave Point, I believe you said it is, right?
Wavelength.
Sorry about that. But you're also you're also a remodeling contractor is your business, and you're also a two-tour Navy veteran. So and you're an electrician in the Navy. So vast background here, and you also said you had a finance degree. Wow! So you are very multifaceted, Phillip.
Thank you.
But share for us a little bit about your background. What brought you to really, creating your album and also your business? Because they're very different, multifaceted things. To be a remodeling contractor and a blues musician, totally two different spectrums.
Yeah. So, I grew up playing the guitar, and I got really, really into blues guitarist and everything, and my sound is probably less bluesy. Wavelength is my album Wavelength is less bluesy than it is more of it's got a pop sound to it. There's some pop tunes on there, and but I've always been an entrepreneur ever since I was 14 years old. My first business I ever started was with a friend. We were making skateboard wax. This is when the Tony Hawk Pro Skater and all that was really, really popular. And so we made our own skateboard wax, and we sold it to our friends and everything. And that was my very first business. And so I kind of got hooked on that. And my dad was very, very poor. He did not have a dime to his name. My parents were divorced, and both of them struggled financially. And, from a very young age, I just told myself that, I knew I wanted to be a business owner, and I knew I wanted to build some kind of business empire that would be able to support me and my family and my heirs, and which of I don't have any children, but
someday.
Someday. And so that was the business aspect of it. Guitar and music and singing and everything was just really a hobby that I just out of nowhere, I just said, I'm going to really pursue this really hard, and I'm going to try and do well in this, and I'm going to market myself and build myself as a brand too, as well as, business is no different than being a musician. You have to build a brand, and just as a musician, you are that brand. And so I already know how to build a brand as far as a business is concerned. So it was actually very complimentary, if you want my honest opinion.
Yeah, I completely see your point there. Really, they're not two separate entities. And it's interesting, your background, seeing your dad financially struggle, did that play a part in you deciding, hey, I'm going to really get a finance degree, build a viable business that then later on, if I have a hobby I want to create into another business like a musician, that I could do that? Is that kind of how it worked out for you?
Yeah, so... It was. I really feel like my educational background was probably largely dictated by that. I wanted to go into finance and run a hedge fund and all that, and I just burned out from all that very quickly and wanted to kind of be free on my own, and so that was kind of where that came from. As far as the finance degree is concerned, it was more of an employment. I try to designate myself into an employment field, but yeah, I will say that trying to be financially free and trying to be financially independent was very much driven by the fact that my parents struggled with financially so much.
It's interesting that you say that, because when I was a kid, I was really drawn to music, but I was drawn to classical music. And my dream was to either be, and this is crazy, I said at 13 I wanted to be a metropolitan opera star. And I remember going to this woman who taught people how to sing, and I said, I want you to teach me. And I told her I wanted to be an opera star. And she's like, okay, dude, you're lucky if I can get you singing in the church choir at this point. But I kind of had very lofty ideas of, I'm going to graduate high school and I'm going to become a musician. And I remember my teachers and my parents saying, so no, but really, what do you want to do when that doesn't work out? And I was like, what do you mean? It's going to work out. But, shortly after I left school, my mom was very persistent that she didn't believe in people just not working. So the minute you graduate high school, even if you go to college, you're to pay your own way to college, but you're to go to work immediately. Right. So, when I left high school, I immediately started looking for work, and I ended up very shortly thereafter in the finance field, which I've been in ever since. And so it's interesting how our journeys can come about, but that can also be affected by how we grow up and what we see around us and what we're told or exhibit in our family. Does that play a part in how you actually deal with money on a daily basis in your business and in your life?
It does. And, there's some really sound financial principles out there that if you follow, you can actually do pretty well. My father passed away when I was 18.
Wow.
And kind of left me, high and dry, both me and my brother. And we didn't really have anywhere to go. So I chose the military as my kind of saving grace, I suppose, and stuff like that. So I had to learn a lot of these principles early. It was definitely something that if I didn't figure it out, I'd probably be lost.
Wow. And so you didn't have a mom. I guess your mom died when you were even younger?
No, my mom's still alive.
Oh, okay.
They just divorced when I was really young, and my mother lives in a different state, several thousand miles away from me. And she did, we were just never close, which is a regret of mine, and I'm sure it's a regret of hers. But she has said on multiple occasions that even as a little boy, I was really, really independent. When she dropped me off at school, there was lots of kids that were clinging to her and crying and everything like that. And she said I was just gone. I was like, I'm going to go play with this thing over here, or I'm going to, stack these blocks over here, and never even gave her a second thought when she would drop me off. So, I wish that her and I probably would have had a better relationship over the years, but I think her and I were just too similar to get along.
Yeah, it's interesting. What's interesting, I have friends who have children who are very different than them, and they don't get along because their personalities are so different. They just can't understand. It's like, are you sure you're my kid and I didn't just pick up the wrong kid home? And then and then sometimes you can be so similar that it's like, okay, we just are bashing heads. I think it depends. Yeah. I mean, I like you was a very loner. Like, I wanted to do things by myself, and I played music for hours, and that was just my thing, and I didn't want to hang with a lot of other kids. Did music help you through some of the hard times when you're, when your dad passed perhaps, or even as you were going through learning the struggles of your early life and early 20s? Did music help you get through that?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So I kind of gave up playing guitar for, a little while, and a friend of mine gave me a John Mayer CD. And I think I told this story because I've probably done maybe 100 radio interviews within the last, 6 months or so. And, I've told this story quite a few times, but I never get tired of telling it because, I think it expresses the power music can have on an individual. Somebody gave me a John Mayer CD, and I'm a huge John Mayer fan. I just absolutely love John Mayer. I love his music. I think he's actually a really funny guy. And somebody gave me his CD back in 2005, right after my dad passed away. And it immediately kickstarted, I don't know if that's the word, but it kickstarted my drive and desire to get back into music, and it helped me cope with a lot of the sadness and grief and frustration that I was going through after having lost my dad. And music was a big part of my dad's life too. So, in some way, this album actually made me feel closer to him. And
Wow.
It's funny too, because when I listened to that album, I told myself, if I ever get the chance to meet John Mayer, I'm going to tell him what this album did for me and how much it meant to have this, particular album. And I want him to know, how I felt about it. So earlier this year in 2017, I actually had the opportunity to meet John Mayer.
Awesome.
And so him and I sat and we talked for a couple minutes, and I told him straight up, I said, I really, really appreciated this album. This is what it did for me, and this is what it meant. This is what it still means to me. And you may not quite understand how I feel about it, but it just was a really powerful album. It was a really powerful message for me to hear back then. And he was, he seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. He was, nodding and listening and asking me questions about it. And I told him, I said, I'm gonna open for you someday, so get ready. And he laughed and I said, no, I'm being serious. Like, I'm going to open for you someday, so keep an eye out.
Oh.
And he said, well, you got here, you got to meet me, so that's probably gonna happen. So.
Yeah, you just keep focused and keep driven and keep going. And I love that I love that you said that he influenced you. And it's interesting. I think in our lives, we can affect so many people around us, whether you're a musician or whatever you might do for a living. Many years ago, I was in high school. I was performing with an orchestra, and we had gone around New York and doing a different performance. And I thought it was interesting. One night after a performance, a complete stranger came up to me in Manhattan and stopped me, and he was crying, and he said that we truly affected him. And I was like, really? And you don't have to be a musician for this to happen to you. I mean, you could smile at someone and they could just want to just, kill themselves that night. And that one smile could get them to re-examine, decide, okay, maybe my life's worth living. You just never know how you're going to influence people. What do you truly hope that Wavelength, your album, will do for others who are listening in?
Well, I think when I wrote the songs on that album, I wanted people to have a similar experience that I had with the John Mayer album. So I want my music to touch people in a way that allows them to get through whatever they're going through, or at least assist them in some way emotionally that helps them get through whatever it is they're going through. Mm-hmm. I have this long distance fan. Mm-hmm. She's out of, I want to say Iowa, but she's I'm seeing like constant reposts of stuff that I've put out and stuff like that. And I love seeing that, because there's been plenty of times where she has said, up the top, like, I'm listening to this and it's getting me through, a really, really tough situation right now. And that is exactly why I wrote the album. That is why I play music. And that is the most rewarding feeling I think I've ever felt in my entire life, is stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And for anyone listening in, no matter what business owner you are or what you do for a living, you can make that same impact. It doesn't have to be writing songs or being a musician. Like I was saying earlier, just in whatever you do your best, and you can bring joy to people in different ways. Now, going back to you as a business owner and your remodeling contracting business, what brought you to that? That seemed like a creative business as well. And what was your biggest challenge getting that business going?
So my whole family, every male in my family has been a contractor going back to like the Civil War. Wow. They were building houses down in Louisiana, a long time ago. And so it's kind of in my blood. So I really tried to get away from that. And that's why I majored in finance, and I wanted to be a white collar worker and all this and everything. But, when it's in your blood, it's in your blood. And so I kind of recognized it, early on, when I could take and just see the way something needed to kind of go back together again. I saw the way sheetrock needed to be installed. I saw the way, a sink, faucet went in. I was always really handy, even as a kid. So for me, that, it just kind of made sense. Once I got out of the military, I ended up just getting my contractor's license and kind of, doing side jobs here and there until I really wanted to expand. And, after I got my finance degree and went to college and everything, that's when I made the decision to kind of expand my business. And, I think the toughest part, to answer the last part of your question, I think the toughest part of starting any business, at least if we don't talk about financing, if we don't talk about loans or any of that, just general, like getting stuff into place, I would say that the roughest and toughest part of starting a business would definitely be getting your starting infrastructure in place. So that way things can run smoothly in your absence. Mm-hmm. And that is in my industry, that has been the hardest challenge. It's, getting workers that
mm-hmm.
know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
When they're working for a customer, you don't get a million calls back from the customer saying, this is all messed up, I want this fixed, and everything like that. But also, one of the steepest learning curves for me was to learn how to manage employees.
Wow.
It was, I did it in the Navy, but at the same time, that was easy. I wasn't paying their paychecks personally. I wasn't watching, their labor be wasted on, some lame project that,
mm-hmm.
Maybe they're better suited for something else, but people interact,
mm-hmm.
In different ways, and certain people learn certain ways. And so when you're teaching somebody something and it works, I try to apply that method to the next person and come to find out they don't actually learn that way. And it can be a very frustrating endeavor.
Wow. That's interesting. You mentioned that, because I wonder what was the differences between managing, say, people when you were in the Navy atmosphere as opposed to in a corporate, or not corporate, but in your contractor business. Was it different? Do people process differently? Is it structured differently? How was it different per se? Mm-hmm.
Well, I think in the Navy, there's a rank structure. So, you tell people to do something, they should be doing it because you outrank them, and and there's a respect there too. There's mutual respect, from senior to subordinate.
Mm-hmm.
In the civilian world, it's a much different story. People are motivated much differently because obviously they have to work on an hourly basis for their paychecks.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. In the Navy, they get paid regardless. So, if they take their sweet time on a task, they're still getting paid the same amount regardless. Well, in the civilian world, people are motivated very differently. And I think one of the hardest parts for me making that transition is that in the Navy, you can't quit and move on. So you can be as hard on one guy or gal as possible because they're just irking your chain. You have to be a little bit more light-handed when you're
mm-hmm.
in a leadership position outside of the military.
Mm-hmm.
I've had plenty of people when I reacted the same way I would when I was in the Navy. I've had people just quit on me in the middle of the day and just leave. And I probably deserved that. I probably deserved that. I was probably angry about something or maybe raising my voice.
Uh-huh.
And, the people respond very differently to criticism.
Yeah.
And, but in my industry, there's a lot of drug addicts.
Really?
So,
wow.
Yeah, you get a lot of people showing up. They're telling you they can do all this. They show up for a day and then never come back again. That never happened in the Navy.
Well, yeah, because I think you're kind of signed up there, and if you try to leave, there's some consequences that are not so pretty.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. But what's interesting, you also mentioned that getting a handle on how each person understands things and interprets and learns, which was I'm guessing a learning curve as well.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get a handle of learning how each person processes, thinking, okay, they're good at this job doesn't necessarily mean they translate into another job?
Yeah. So that is the question to end all questions with regards to employment. It's, there are I'll give you a good example, excuse me. I meant to say a good for instance, but I'll give you a great example. The first one that comes to mind is there was somebody I had that was really good at tiling floors and tiling walls and everything like that. They were really good at applying ceramic tile and installing that, but they couldn't install a roof to save their life. It just did not make sense in their head the way things went together. And it really, really surprised me because I thought they'd be complementary skills, but they're not. So it's each new individual task, as I think if the person has the willingness and drive to learn it and the mental fortitude to see a task through, I think they're much more likely to learn a certain skill set than if they are just grinding away, hating it. I think that's kind of common sense, but.
Well, I love that you mentioned it because I've come into difficulty working with people in my business and Savvy, and you think that things will work out, and as you say, they'll come on board and say, "Oh, I can do all these things. I'm totally equipped for this job." They seem to be equipped. Their resume looks fabulous, but you soon come to find out there's a whole bunch of gaps and things that don't quite work out, and it isn't, I guess, an ever-going journey to realize, your resources, to see what skills they have and how they are either complementary or not to your business. And also, as you said earlier, understanding and getting your foundation set up in your business, as you said, is one of the first tasks and most monumental tasks to getting started.
Sure.
Yeah. So where do you see going in this coming year with your upcoming album, Wavelength? Where do you want to see yourself with your business and with your upcoming album?
Yeah, so I'm hoping my business is, I'm trying to transition into full-time musician, and just maybe having more of an indirect role in the way my business goes, because I've got a manager in place and I've got a good crew together that I've put together over the last couple of years, and so and I'd like to move more into an indirect role there. Music wise, Wavelength, I am going to I'm going to play it until people are sick and tired of hearing it, and then I'm going to come out with something new. And it's I love to play music. I love to play the guitar, and I like I said, I want that album to be there for people when they need it. And there's some people out there that roll their eyes and they're like, yeah, how am I going to have music that's there for me like it's a person? But there's a lot of times where a good song, a really nice song, can get me out of a funk I'm in. And I hope I can produce that and write something like that for someone else.
I know it's worked for me when I've been in a really difficult spots in my life, either playing it or listening to it. And what's really interesting, Phillip, is that when I go back to that moment, like that song comes back on the radio, I remember that good time, bad time, whatever time, it kind of brings you right back to that moment in time when you were struggling. But at the same time, it doesn't bring up yucky emotion, just helps you remember, oh, that song was there for me back in 1982 when I was going through XYZ, that breakup in high school.
I wasn't born in 1982, so I wouldn't know.
Oh my gosh, you were born after 1982?
I was born in 1986. Yeah, I'm 31.
Oh my gosh, I'm older than you.
Well, you know what, I'm gonna say something, okay? Because I've noticed this throughout the interview.
Tell me.
If you please don't ever stop laughing, because your laugh is infectious. It's in a good way. It's definitely contagious. So definitely keep laughing. That's been an awesome part of this interview.
Oh,
and I'm not saying that to flatter you. I just want you to know it's contagious. Like, I want to start laughing every time you laugh. It's good.
Thank you, Phillip. Well, I love this. What I also get from what you're sharing with our audience today is that it wasn't a one-step process reaching your dreams, and that you've now set up a very good foundation for your business where now you can start to let it go to someone else. You set up a good foundation, good processes, so that now someone can take over and you can do your other dreams. Because I don't think we're ever put on this earth to do one thing. I know my mom used to say, you should be here, do this job, whatever this job is going to be, and you do it until you leave and kick off with retirement, and then you get to have fun. And I'm like, heck no, that's not how I want to live, and I don't think that's how God meant us to live on this wonderful, great planet. So I thank you again coming to share this great gift today. But before we leave, let everyone know where they can get your awesome album, Wavelength, and where they can find out more about you and maybe hear your upcoming shows coming up.
Yeah, sure. So Wavelength is available on Spotify. You can find it as well on Google Play and Amazon Music, pretty much any streaming service. And the hard copies are being made right now. It's something I've taken a little bit of time on because people just don't buy physical copies the way they used to.
Yeah.
So it's something I've taken a little bit of time on. But, if you want it now, which you should, it's actually pretty decent. If I don't say so myself. I mean, I wrote them, so of course I'm going to tout my own stuff. But at the same time, I do think there's a song on there for everybody. I think there's songs that take you up high, there's songs that take you down low, and I think there's songs that are pretty neutral. So, and that's why I named it Wavelength. It looks, if you think of a sine wave, there's songs that it brings you up, it brings you down, and it takes you right back to the middle again. Everything is up and down and right back to center. So I think Wavelength is that is able to be that for a lot of people. I do play shows in the Seattle area. I've played at Columbia City Theater. I've played at the Skylark. I've played at the High Dive. And in Tacoma, I've played at the Swiss. And I will be playing there, and I keep people updated through my Facebook. Just check me out, Phillip Broussard. That's PhillipBroussard.
That's great. And I love that you say Wavelength has everything for everyone, because that's life. Life is, we're up and down. Our emotions aren't in one place. As we have different. Yeah. So that will be awesome for anyone who wants to go there. Now, can they get a digital copy that they can download and buy from you today on somewhere or Spotify or anywhere, or just listen to it?
I believe they can. They can on Amazon Music and Google Play as well. You can purchase it on there.
Awesome. Well, I have to thank you again, Phillip, for coming to share your great wisdom today on Savvy Business Radio.
Thank you so much, and I really look forward to keeping in touch. I hope I hope I'm able to be a regular, once a year or so.
You betcha.
Savvy Business Radio broadcasts worldwide via a large podcast network, celebrating business owners, entrepreneurs, influencers, and successful individuals. Find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest. Call 732-474-7375 or email Christina at savvybusinessradio.com.